It's just a wacky slice of life day here on Bajor Please. A vile visit to Bajor. My name is Joseph.
I'm your timid, miserable, understudy special guest star. My name's Peter.
Peter, before we get into this week's episode, I have to share something that occurred after we published our most recent episode relative to our recording, which was Ben Works the Fields on Paradise. And we mentioned during recording it, because it was impossible not to draw the parallel, given that if Ben Sisko, a black man, your only visible black male, character really in the history of Star Trek television up to this point, has an entire episode where he becomes essentially an indentured agricultural servant and then is put into a metal box as a punishment when he won't bend the knee to a imperious plantation owner that insists on calling him by his first name. It's screaming at you. And then apparently, I didn't know this, but there was a movie called Roots, The Gift from, it looks like 1988, which I guess is a continuation of the Roots miniseries from the 1970s. And in it, Kate Mulgrew plays some kind of Southern lady plantation oriented person that goes and is a slave catcher and catches a slave played by Avery Brooks. and Tim Russ is in it, is a house servant. Of course, LeVar Burton is like, what is this? Is this real? I couldn't believe it was real. I thought it was like, is this something someone photoshopped of this picture that was shared in the Discord? And no, it's a screen cap from this movie.
How strange that the Memory Alpha said nothing about any of this.
Yes, and how strange is it that somehow there's no lore on this on the official wiki for Star Trek? How is this parallel somehow not been drawn by someone?
I'm going to chalk that up to a situation people don't want to discuss, and they keep the wiki to the 24th century.
I call bullshit. Like, the 7 of 9 episode from Voyager that we took a pass on it reviewing, that was essentially a sexual assault metaphor, that Memory Alpha is thick with people talking about that, and that the fact that the plot was essentially felt like that was what was happening. I don't know if this was by accident. We watched Paradise. We couldn't actually draw the conclusion if they did that on purpose or not. You would think that they did, but at the same time, it's played so completely straight that maybe they didn't. But how is it that somehow no one ever watched that and then, looked up the IMDb for all these people and said, well, isn't it strange that they were all in this movie about slavery together like a few years before their show started? Like,
that's a lot of Star Trek main cast to be in the same property and for it never to really pop up. Was it a made-for-TV movie?
It looks like it was. And it's like, especially with Avery Brooks, and there's episodes to come of Deep Space Nine that very explicitly go into social politics in a way that, is not at all subtle. And there's open discussion all the time about why they made those episodes, and the actors in particular having very firm opinions about it that they've talked about a lot in all kinds of interviews at conventions for years. And yet, this fucking episode, Paradise, I could find nothing about anyone talking about, like, hey, you turned Ben Sisko into a fucking field slave. and isn't it strange that he also played that role in 1988 and the person who caught him was Captain Janeway? Like, how is that something no one ever brought up?
Well, we're bringing it up now. Who spotted that?
J Minor 81.
There you go. There's your shout out.
Bro. Solid.
Yeah. You can interview him as to why he had that information ready to go. Maybe there's a whole subculture you're not aware of.
The bounty is real. I don't know what I will reward a listener for doing if they find some tape somewhere of someone acknowledging that this happened. But someone has to. I could not find it, which is strange because there's so. These Star Trek actors in particular have been going to these fucking conventions for decades. There is so much tape of them talking about every fucking thing when it comes to the show.
and being real keen to talk about things that were not the show.
Oh yeah.
So that's we'll see if it's out there. I assume anything that's made for TV, movie, just people are very quick to forget and move along with life.
Yeah,
but,
no, I understand. But anyway, what episode of Star Trek are we talking about this week?
Season 2, episode 17, Playing God, first aired February 27th, 1994. Teleplay by Jim Trabata and Michael Piller. Story by Jim Trabata. Director is David Livingston.
So I kind of completely forgot about this episode, which is a shame because it's a fantastic Dax backstory episode.
Which she's due to have, because all of the previous entries into this have been pretty shitty. There was Dax, which was the court.
It was like a terrible way to introduce her character when you really think about it. How bad that episode
was invasive procedures, right?
Correct.
That's Obs of Rage, which is very big on the Trill process. Again, she's
process
silent,
episode, but you know nothing about Jadzia.
Still. And she's quiet through most of the thing because she's knocked out on a surgery table.
Right.
While fistfights and ops really steal the show. So third time's a charm. We're going to tell a Dax episode. This is going to tell you more about the joining process and selection. And as you're saying here, this is the first one we really dig into who she was prior to joining and some of the baggage she has brought forward into this process of prepping new initiates for consideration by the council. And the goal of what's going to be happening here is to let them effectively shadow. And I don't know if this is supposed to be an observation of the, I don't want to say student, but the applicant, or if this is really supposed to be the applicant saying, do I truly want this in my life?
It's also a fascinating episode as it relates to Trill culture. There's some lines dropped about how arrogance is something of a trait within their entire race, which matches with sort of the imperiousness of the Trills that we have met, which honestly is not many, right?
Yeah.
But is a trait as we meet more Trills, as you can imagine we will, is actually pretty universal within their race. And the sort of societal expectation of someone who wants to be joined and what it means. It's not, you have to be an excellent person, first and foremost. You have to just be extremely smart, well prepared, without any personal, deficiencies of your own, because the intention is you have to add to what this creature is going to experience. You can't subtract. You can't be shitty, because if you're shitty, you're dragging the whole project down, right?
I want to see a rework of Idiocracy where there is a terrible plague that ravages the hosts, and all of a sudden the Trills are getting put into like
dipshits from the version of Trill that's West Virginia. I get it. Like we're putting the symbiotes in Trill Hill trash now because that's all that's left.
Walmart cashiers.
Yeah, because they're just slugs. They're just going to crawl right in, and they're going to like, all right, I'm in my new oh, no. Guys, what's going on? Why do I want to bang my sister? What is happening right now? What have you done?
That's the bridge we need to cross in these Trill episodes is go back in time. What happened on this planet where they were like, let's try putting this, let's cut my stomach open and put this slug in. I bet you that's fun.
Right. Like what's the prehistory of the Trill race that somehow this conclusion got drawn?
Was this bioengineering attempts like in their version of the 80s and 70s that like they discontinued but kept enough of, there's a good story to tell there. I need to know, how did you come to put a slug in your stomach as a species?
I don't know if there's a like memory beta book on the prehistory of Trill or anything like that. So this is a total shot in the dark. But if you were to create that origin, I think it would go like this. In the ancient, call it Stone Age period of Trill, someone found one of these parasitical beings, and because of the latent psychic potential of the Trill race, they were able to communicate with it. And somehow were able to figure out that they could coexist and build on their shared life experiences if they were shared with others. Because that's part of the background of the Trill race is they're kind of like Vulcans in that they have this latent psychic ability, and that's what is allowing this to happen. That's why it's kind of going to end up being a more of a sort of not just scientific but also mystical process. There's probably a pretty easy tale to tell there of like civilization on Trill was able to advance because these people figured out they could join with these things, and then they would be joined with someone else, and that person would become a natural leader and help the society can, expand, grow, and thrive. And Trill society then came based around people who are capable of this as natural extensions of the Trill's ability to be leaders and thinkers and people who interact with the galaxy. I get it. That's how I would do it because that's how it feels.
I would do it as the Trill were somehow an invasive species, and that on Earth it would have been pod people in an uprising, and having to do witch hunts to see who's been infected. And these guys were kind of like, this is actually pretty awesome, and we can advance the entire species, and we're not going to fight this. Like, this is cool. Let's keep doing this. And you know what? I'm going to pass it on to my grandkids here. Cut your stomach open. Take
They
this.
just kind of figured it out and realized, well, why don't we should just do this. Let's create supremacy beings. Let's just get after it.
Yeah. Like, that's essentially the bad ending of like the zombie invasion movie. The pod people win, and they reinvent the entire culture to laud them as a treasured commodity. The Trill slugs, there's a finite amount, right? Like, they're not
Correct.
growing new ones.
Well, it's not that they're not growing new ones. It's that there's less of them than there are Trill. So I don't know if there's ever a direct explanation of this on camera, but I believe the implication is that they do reproduce, but they do so much more slowly than the Trill race. So there's never going to be enough for those that are actually interested in being joined.
Fantasy biology.
Right. So not a finite amount, but also not enough. Kind of nebulae in that area.
So this episode starts off with a Federation transport docking with Deep Space Nine. I feel like we've seen these transports before. It looks like it's using the kind of the retro-looking Constitution refit nacelles that we saw on the Mirandas.
Do you remember the episode of TNG Relics?
Yeah.
So the transport ship that Scotty was on, it's the same thing. Total reuse of the model.
It's a good reuse.
Yeah, and they'll continue to reuse it for some time, actually.
Getting off the ship, we got Bashir, and we've got Mr. Doopy. What's his name?
so this is Arjun. And Arjun is chatting up with Bashir because he's here to be a initiate for potential joining under Dax. So apparently, as part of going through this initiate training, you have to train under Trill that are already been joined so that you can be recommended or perhaps have your training ended, depending on if someone who's joined judges you are or are not worthy of continuing. And apparently Dax is a tough one to get because Curzon was very mean and always brutally shot down the initiates that were assigned under him. Of course, now it's Jadzia Dax, so Arjun here, he's a little trepidatious, but at the same time, doesn't really know what to expect.
What is your thoughts on the Skyplane, Arjun?
I found it interesting that Terry Farrell and the guy who played this guy played boyfriend and girlfriend on another television show in the 80s called Paper Dolls. And I got the impression that they had worked together before because they have a little bit of chemistry You know, like they seem to be willing to kind of go at each other a little bit the way that you might not expect out of two people who've never worked together before. I'm thinking forward into the episode from when Jadzia starts breaking his balls in the science lab.
Yeah.
That like that's a great scene because they're kind of really going after each other. And I think that's because they've worked together before. They know each other.
I found him miserable on screen, very distracting from the story. It felt to me like he was awarded the role because he had a family member somewhere in the production team.
I
That got,
did not dislike him. I think he served his purpose of kind of being a blank.
I mean, the story here is that all of the kids in this preparatory program for the joining system, you know, they're all Eagle Scouts. They're all top academic achievers. This is stuff that we got a taste of in Ops of Rage when the Bad Trill was talking about how he had dedicated his entire life singularly around a joining, and that when he was rejected, that effectively he had nothing left, and that he had overinvested his ego into this thing. And that's what you're seeing here. This guy is a little bit more layered because he doesn't personally want it. He's chasing a parent's dream, which is never really addressed by him directly. But he's very bland. And I think by design, again, because these aren't traveled, well-rounded people. They're turbo nerds trying to get the best test score so they can get the highest grade to get a slug put in their stomach because their species has been conquered. I think this role would have played better as a woman. And I think the threat there is that her story, Arjun's story, would have been too close to Jadzia's story. But I think that would have been a good story in of itself, is that I see you, you are me, you have the same problems I did, and you need to, I don't know, what's her advice ultimately? It's not relax. What is it? Have
You have
purpose?
you have to understand what it is you're trying to do. Like, it isn't enough to be the whole speech that she ends up giving him in Quarks is actually her advice, which is, I understand you're one of the best ever at taking tests, right? That you're an extraordinarily talented potential future space person. Understood. I'm not doubting that. I'm trying to tell you that's not enough. You have to know what the fuck you're going to. What are you adding to this, right? I don't need just another good high achiever. What are you adding to this? What are you bringing to the table that I have not experienced over 7 fucking lifetimes?
Which is a hilarious criticism for Jadzia Dax to have, because she just spent the entirety of season 1 being a pointless character that didn't know its own purpose.
Precisely, which is so, it's kind of gratifying for them to snap back and finally figure out who this person is supposed to be and start really defining her as a character and seeing the synthesis between the person she describes herself as having been and who you know Curzon to be, and this kind of the synthesis of the Dax experience within her. Like, you can see how she figured out what this character is supposed to be like. And it's a hard one to figure out too. Okay, I was this person and now I'm being influenced basically by the spirit of a trickster god. Right? Like,
yeah.
Dax is a bon vivant. Dax is a vibrant personality. Dax isn't above some very like interpersonal chaos. Dax isn't above fucking. Dax loves to fuck.
Ugly,
right?
specifically, by the way. That's why Bashir can't get his foot in the door. Really, is he's too pretty.
Pretty boy. Yeah. She likes him. She likes him rough around the edges.
You don't have any shit glued to your face. We cannot copulate. I'm sorry.
I don't look like I'm going to cut myself on you. Therefore, I don't find it exciting. Again, like, well, you know, she's lived several lifetimes of sexual experience too.
Like, here,
she's. I need it weird. Like, I need Dax it weird is. Now.
Dax is a rad ghoul. She's a sentient ghoul. She is racist against the smooth skins. She's been around for a long time. She remembers
She knows
before the
friction
bombs.
feels good.
Ugh,
Right.
ribbed for her pleasure.
Exactly. So,
So this guy wasn't supposed to show up so early. Bashir's like, we're going to go find her. And he's like, well, I mean, it's late. It's late. She's going to be sleeping. Oh, no. She's gambling with the little troll people.
it is a great way to define Dax, is that she's the one who's willing to be up at 2:00 in the morning, gambling with all of the Ferengi and taking them for everything they're worth. And that she
Half
loves it.
jacking Quark off.
Yeah, and like pissing Quark off and then kind of giving him a tug on his ears, and taking all of their money, but they kind of like it because, she's a hot chick and she'll hang out with them. Like, you can see the dynamic and that she's playing them and
Sure.
they like being played. They're enjoying it.
Once upon a time, you and I would have been like very excited to see that she was playing. What's this called? It's not Dabo. It's what?
Tongo.
Tango. She's playing tango with the Ferengi. We'd be like, oh my God, continuity. And now DS9 has so thoroughly spoiled us that I've forgotten the days of Voyager and the dearth of continuity.
It has so much continuity, you begin to take it for granted. You're absolutely right. That's what's happening. Like, this episode is a follow-up to Jake is trying to bang a Davo girl. Spoiler alert, the C plot is that he landed the plane.
How old do you have to be
shit.
to be a Dabo girl?
What's that?
Because didn't we just establish that Jake's 15 years old?
Correct.
Oh, Lucy
4 years
Goosey.
older than him. 4 years older than him.
Oh, so that's statutory rape. All right. Let me just Google here real quick. What is statutory rape on Bajor? I mean, they're under Bajor law, or is this? It's not technically a full Federation station, but is it? I don't know. Oh no! Google AI just gave me a real answer.
And Marta shows up at one point, and I think that they just realized that this was not quite right. Like, Jake just read too young, and they bailed out. But this goes on for a while. By the way, him banging the 19-year-old Dabo girl. What's the answer?
The age
by the
of
way?
consent on Bajor? Search Labs AI overview. In Bajoran culture, the age of consent, or the coming of age, ceremonially is known as Inyatu, typically at 14 years old. So,
oh my God, Bajor problematic. Bajor, what are you doing? I know you're a primitive religious species, but can you tighten that up? You gotta tighten that up. You can't be doing that. We expect more out of you, Bajor.
Now we know why.
Pakistan.
Now we know why the Cardassians were so adamant about setting up occupation there.
Are they the British? Are they showing up for like, I'm sorry, this place requires civilization.
Wait, 14-year-olds? Yes, set up an outpost here.
Yes, it's like, I think
build a space station.
Is Gul Dukat secretly someone just trying to prevent child sex trafficking?
Or indulging in it? Who knows?
Ooh. Oh,
that's
again, they're bad here now.
That's what I'm saying.
Terrible layers.
What exactly was Tarek Nor mining? Was it children's?
Pull up. We can't.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to cut so much of that. So yeah, Marta's this girl. We'll see her later. But I do love that they close the loop on that from like 5 episodes ago when he's like hanging out with Nog, being ne'er-do-wells on the promenade.
It's wonderful Ben and Jake time nonetheless.
Oh, as always. It's like but a scene, but yet you have to continue this journey through Cisco. Like, oh man, my son is. I don't know what to do about this, right? Like, he goes through it. Like, if I tell him no, I might egg him on. Like, maybe I need to like show interest and get better intel. What's going on? Like, he's working through the parental motions and trying to find what lane he wants to take. And I think he finds the right one, but you can see him which one he's going to try out. Like, how hard do I want to go at this guy?
I love that he drops all of the Federation future idealism. Like, he can be a Starfleet officer and the chickenpox people are scabbing up the station real bad. And he's like, No, it's worth it. Look at them as they get their first taste of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a son like, hey, Dad, I've got you. I've got the logical high ground. And, I'm a person. And this is what I want. And are you going to be honorable and respectful? No! I'm your dad. Hell no. Double standards and everything. All that Federation idealism out the window. I'm a real talk parent, and I'm putting my foot down on this nonsense right now. And
What's
I think
the
about
line
how,
from
like,
the page? There's the line from The Patriot from Mel Gibson. Like, I don't have the luxury of principles. I'm a parent. It's like, boom.
and I think about how Picard would handle that, and how Picard handled all of his interpersonal affairs, and like how he acted on the bridge is exactly how he acted like in his personal life.
Right.
The solid integrity, and the first duty of every Starfleet officer
It's to the truth. Yeah.
And that is not the way that Ben Sisko runs this household.
No, and it is a nice comparison of a character who's famously childless and lamented perhaps the lost opportunity that presented to him when he was forced to reflect on the death of his own brother and nephew. As somebody who did get to have the luxury of being able to live his principles because he wasn't a parent, and then Ben Sisko, who has to balance his life around it because his wife is dead, so there's not even somebody else to take on the burden. Very cool, and you get a little taste of that in just one scene, strategically added into what is otherwise just kind of a really nice slice of life too. Of like, there's a bullshit Starfleet problem that happens, and so we've got to do bullshit Starfleet's super science to deal with it. But in the middle of that, like, O'Brien's trying to get rid of a bunch of space rats.
Where do you think Space Bucky's gets that delicious barbecue from?
Give them to Quark. Put them on the menu, brother.
Ugh.
Emergency rations.
So you got the A plot, which is the Trill internship.
Right.
You got the B plot, which is the
Vols.
The micro universe. Right?
I guess, yeah, you're right. That is the B.
Listen, it almost blew the space station up. It is a B plot.
It's a separate plot, yeah.
You've got the space rats. And then
yeah, you got the Jake scene, so you can even
my
say
son's
there's a D
dating
plot.
a cam girl.
A 19-year-old cam girl.
It's a busy episode with a lot of good overlap. I would say my favorite part of the episode is the space rats. So let's talk about that. Tarek Noor was a space station that was designed to house 6,000 people, and they've been running at 500 people.
Correct. Yes. Barely using the ship's, the station's potential.
So as they've been slowly filling up rooms, all these space rats, these Cardassian space rats that had been living in the empty places, chewing everything up and shitting all over the place, they have now, like deer in a deforested area, they're coming out into the populated areas. They're chewing up the cables, lights are flickering. They're very lucky there's not a serious space dilemma, because how awkward would it be to like lose the station to Bajoran separatist forces or Cardassians coming back, or whatever dilemma the space butthole could have pooped out because Cardassian space rats chewed up all your gravity control or something.
They're lucky it was just having to deal with an expanding universe that they found on accident. We'll get to that, though. We'll get to that. I
love
agree
that
with the Vols plotline being a perfect. This is a novel thing we've never seen someone have to deal with in Star Trek. It makes sense. I can my mind can attach to a idea of some sort of space adapted vermin creature that has just infected all this giant space station they're barely using, and so they have to go through and do all of this vermin control while they're getting new staterooms and trying to activate new docking pylons or whatever else is going on. And the idea that like O'Brien is even reduced to having to call the Cardassians for like advice on what the fuck to do about it.
And they're just like, fuck you, give us our station.
Like, enjoy.
6 weeks is going to be their mating season. I hope they're not done with this plot line, by the way.
Oh, just like the appearance of Vols?
They don't resolve it. The one thing they have that they think they might be able to use to combat these things uh, is absolutely inappropriate because you've got a large segment of your population that is also affected by that. Speaking of which, by the way, as that Starfleet transport opened up, I love how much traffic, pack-led traffic, comes through Deep Space Nine.
They seem to really like that Paklin makeup for some reason. Just breaking it out.
It's got to be easy, and I mean, it makes sense that Deep Sheets 9 is heavy with pack-led. They're idiots and dummies, and them skulking around on the outskirts of the quadrant makes sense, but I love in this episode they reduce Miles O'Brien for a second time to crawling through Jeffrey's tubes with phasers like it's a Vietnam movie.
Hey, this seems like something that you would do a lot in Vietnam. So, O'Brien, you're going to be the one who did it because you're the character who is supposed to have fought in space Vietnam.
I would be like,
It's
listen, how about this? The last time I did do this, I was chasing Odo as he was rampaging through the stations, destroying things. So since I had to fix all the stuff he broke, Odo, why don't you do me a favor?
and goo
And
your
you
way
go,
in there.
just goo your way in there and snatch up all the rats. And I think that's a great idea. That's how I would deal with space rats on Deep Sheets 9.
I appreciate they always find something comfortably blue collar for O'Brien to be doing. The real point is like his sleeves are always up. He's got grease on his outfit.
It's
So he's
Charlie
got a
work.
wrench in his hand. This man works, and he's in the background fixing something every episode, right? It's very consistent. It adds a color to everything that's going on. That this is a constant work in progress, and there's a reason why Miles was picked for the job. He is a grease monkey.
Well, he's not alone. Kieran Reese, who also is very familiar with trench warfare and getting down and dirty, she's climbing through there too, and it's a nice moment to sidestep the exploitation shot that Voyager would have given us of Jerry Ryan's butt sticking out of a tube, and we get Kieran Reese's butt along with Miles O'Brien's butt. Just to be fair,
First, this is another addition into the lore that you've built of O'Brien and Kira seem to be two characters that should be together. Like they seem to have a lot in common. They seem to get along very well. Every time they don't have a ton of interaction, but all the time it's very like they're very cool with each other. And so like the idea of like, yes, we have to combine forces to find and kill these creatures. Come, fellow person who kills people, let us. We are the violence doers on this station.
we're going to advocate for genocide together.
So A, that works. And then B, this episode has a couple sexual exploitation spots. Like let's break out the old Enterprise. It's nothing compared to fucking Jolene Blaylock's Shadow Nips, but this has not only a blatant Kira ass shot, this has Terry Farrell in a towel.
Yeah.
And just showing off, right? Like, I am the space hottie. I just got done fucking this guy. Any subtext has now been obliterated and replaced with explicit text. Jadzia Dax likes to fuck. This is a known factor. Quark talks about it, and you just get to see on screen. Yeah, it's what I do. I like to fuck.
I banged my wrestling coach.
Right? And I also am pretty casual about it. I'll recommend him to you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can fuck him. Maybe
You
you'd
can
like
sit on the couch while I get dressed, and this is going to hang there. And of course, Mr. Doofy's like, and it's kind of blown up in his face because of his own doing, because this is the second time he's been too early. This guy's too overachievy. It's too blatant. He wasn't supposed to be there for another 15 minutes or whatever. He's there early, so he's seeing this stuff. He's seeing how the sausage is made.
At least how it's hidden.
I've never had Ferengi coffee. Oh, I've never done this, and it's beating the inexperienced drum pretty loudly. Her hair. She's in the towel. She's got normal human hair. What does she do for her duty uniform where there's like a large bump on her head somewhere under her hair? Like,
Yeah,
you see it,
she
right?
puts it up in some kind of hairdo that gives it this extra volume in the back, and I cannot explain how it's done.
It's like a bump, but it's not. I don't know. And I
It's like
figured,
tied up in a bun, and it's like that bun is then concealed by her hair. I don't get it. I don't. It's it, either. I mean, I think it might be that she has a wig that she wears when she's like got her hair and duty uniform, and this is her without the wig on. But that it didn't seem that far off for that to necessarily be the case either.
I think they wanted her to be alien, and the cheetah print wasn't enough, and they're like, do something to her hair to just make it look different.
Yeah. And you have
And
to want to pin her hair back because you want all the spots to be visible, right? So whatever do you're
yeah,
going to do, it has to pin it back. And at the same time, maybe Tara Farrell's like, I'm not going to cut my hair. I'm not going to like do the pixie cut thing.
I would
So
think,
they've
I
come
don't
up
know.
with something.
Well, that was nice to see on screen that that is not just the shape of her skull, and it's
Yeah. And it is noticeable because eventually they allow her just to do a normal ponytail. So she says like normal human hair,
hmm,
and it's not done up in this extra do in the back.
I
It's
look
just,
forward to that. It's
yeah. And it's
distracting.
like a much better look because it's not so weird.
The guy continues to stumble over questions, whatever. She goes, hey, we're going to go on a mission. It comes to light that his dad was a pilot. She only reached level 3 piloting. He is a level 5 pilot with none of the attributes or personality type to go along with being a crack shot pilot. They fly off into the Delta or the Gamma Quadrant, and as they're flying around, they hit a space pothole.
They do. And I guess the interesting thing that happens in this conversation is that Jadzia presents herself as, listen, you can be real with me. Felt like I was just an initiate. I just barely got the Dax symbiote recently. Don't feel like you got to impress me. She's trying to like be really nice to this guy. And I obviously dislike the guest actor far less than you. I'd even say as much as I kind of like near the end when his personality starts to come more to the surface, like that you find out who this guy is. But eventually she's going to turn on this like 180 degrees and start assessing him differently. And I feel like it's very realistic though, of you realize you took your foot off the gas too much after she talks to Ben about it and realizes that she's holding herself back from really being a good mentor and doing what her duty really is to her race by ensuring that whoever she passes muster through this program actually is somebody worthy of being joined and can grow a symbiote's experiences in the world. And yet you kind of have some sympathy for Arjun because, yeah, like she was pretty disarming in just wanting him to feel like I'm just one of the bros, you know? I'm just one of the guys. I'm barely more than what you are. You know, I'm still figuring this out. I can't fail you, you know?
She has this change of heart after a meeting with Cisco,
Yeah.
where Cisco defends Curzon Dax's ruthlessness. And this is before the US had its big anti-bullying push,
Sure did.
because what's the line there? He's like, yeah, he could be mean, if not outright cruel, but it's because he demanded the absolute best, and wasn't afraid to be mean to make it happen, which I don't think is a message you're going to get out of media in 2025.
Oh, definitely not. He says downright cruel in his own charming way. I think is the exact way he phrases it. So like even Dax when he was cruel was still this extremely charismatic person, or at least in the form of Curzon. Although that's a pretty constant when we finally get to know all of the other incarnations.
Sure.
Charisma. Charisma is a pretty general trait. But
This is pre-participation trophy.
yes. And I don't think the whole Trill thing works without exactly what Ben explains, right? To say you're hiding from your responsibility to ensure your race is picking the best of the best for this honor to be able to be part of this experience that is supposed to help your entire species continue to excel and evolve, right?
When those slugs conquered you, they did so with the intent that they would get the best of the best. And how dare you feed the slug anything less than an absolute thoroughbred unit?
Well, there's your expansion to your idiocracy idea. Is that's how they got revenge on the slugs? Is they made they bred themselves down so they could drag them into the abyss with them.
There's nowhere to run. You have to go down this terrible hole of degeneracy with us.
I think that as an episode that helps you understand Jadzia, it's actually surpassed my expectations because of this stuff. Like everything with her when she comes back into the science lab and is clocking this guy clean about how he's gonna was trying to amend his statements from earlier and saying like, don't insult my intelligence by acting like you weren't tossing and turning over what you said to me last night because I used to be the person doing that. Like, don't lie to me. Like I don't fucking know, right? I've done it 9 times, you dipshit, right?
And he's like, oh, well, I was real nervous about losing this. But suddenly, I've had a change of the heart.
I've decided I'm mad enough to be really mean.
And I've decided, fuck you. I don't care about this. And I'm going to get a good 8 lines of dialogue telling you you're a bitch. You're a sloppy drunk.
Yeah, you're a sloppy drunk degenerate bitch.
You got a gambling habit. You're a hoe. And fuck it, I'm out. Mic drop. I was like, this guy, I don't think really wants this position. And that's kind of the story I was waiting for them to tell here, was that I thought that once he got behind the stick on the runabout and they're like having to play the video game where they're flying between black holes or whatever, that the real him was going to come to the surface and you're going to see someone who had a real joy for flying and a passion, and that was going to be like the realization of everybody of,
I shouldn't be trying to be joined. I should just be pursuing this. Yeah.
You're living your dad's fantasy, that charming story about how he disowned his daughter. So this guy's story is that his dad was a flight instructor, always had a dream of his children being joined, that the older sister was the one he was betting on. And as soon as she got accepted into the program, she ran off and got married. And the dad disowned her. And the last words this dad said on his deathbed to his son was, I'm counting on you. So a lot of pressure on it. And as we explore this Argon's character, he doesn't really have a plan. What are you going to do once you get joined? If you get joined, what are you going to do? Starfleet? No, I don't know. Something will come to me.
Who knows?
The answers will come to me once I'm the superhuman. And that's I'm just focused right now on getting it in me. I don't really have perspective beyond that. And so, yeah, I really thought this was going to be kind of like the Jake Sisko story of, Dad, I don't want your dream. I want my own dream. My heart's not in this thing. And thankfully, this docent, this instructor has opened my eyes that I'm not happy with what I'm doing. And I'm going to go be my own person. And that doesn't happen at all.
Well, I want to defend what they did instead, because I felt like it spoke to a different potential audience or psychological concern, or took a different path that I don't think is invalid. And it's really centered actually on the conversation Quark has with Arjun in Quarks that I thought was actually pretty resonant. Quark is entertaining his desire to drink as much as possible. He is being a bartender, so he's talking with his patron, and Arjun reveals that he's thrown his potential opportunity at becoming joined into the garbage. This is where Quark confirms Jadzia is in fact quite the hoe and has left a trail of broken hearts across the station. But we hear from Quark about how he had his opportunity at greatness. And he had a government job, that he was had the right friends. He was on the way up, and he made a mistake. He wasted his opportunity. He even references a very specific rule of acquisition, 112. Never have sex with the boss's sister. Fantastic Quark backstory, by the way. Delightful. And it says, yeah, I never recovered from that. I'm a bartender on the ass end of space. I never was able to take off in my career as a hyper capitalist because I had my shot, I got in my lane, and then I fucked it up by banging the wrong broad, and here I am.
He
And
calls
that's
it
just the way life is sometimes. Maybe you don't throw away your chances.
you got one shot at the Latinum staircase. You miss it, and look at me now. I'm bartending at, what do you call it, Wormhole Junction, while the big shots fly by at warp speed. That's the real story in this episode. It's not this bullshit about Jadzia's history. It's how Quark had a chance and ended up working on a Cardassian slave station. Keep that in mind too. However,
because he banged the boss's sister too. Because Quark could not help himself, and he fucked his boss's sister. That's lore. He says it.
However,
and this is such a problem that there's a rule of acquisition about it.
However bad his life looks now, 5 years ago it was even worse when it was just a death camp, and he was bartending in a death camp. I'm assuming willingly. Like he doesn't seem to be a prisoner, so like he has gone there to set up shop. How much money could you make at a death camp?
I guess the guards got to spend their money somewhere, right? Like have a little bit of a captured audience.
Let's see, if it was 6,000, a population of 6,000, it's probably a pretty good garrison of forces there.
It does say something about Quark of like how desperate he must have been that he decided to take the opportunity to open a bar in a death camp. Like that's all the opportunity he could find for himself.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it in that respect. Like that says that Quark was probably
pariah.
Desperate. He was desperate for an opportunity to make some kind of profit. And this has worked out way better than he had ever hoped, but
while they're flying around in the Gamma Quadrant, they hit a space pothole. Turns out it's a proto-universe. You might have seen Men in Black, which I believe came out sometime around then, where there was a proto-universe in a cat's collar. They bring it back. They beam the space anomaly into a containment field, and they're going to study it.
Oh no, the vols. Like, A plot needs to B plot. Ah, fuck.
The space rats claw at the force field and wildly disrupt everything, and there's a large explosion. What kind of force field is this that can't stand up to a rat, by the way?
I mean, it's the kind of force field you can make with Cardassian technology, right? O'Brien is an amazing guy in this episode when he thinks about it. He's erecting force fields strong enough to crush proto-universes. He transports a whole universe. He transports an entire universe onto a runabout and locks it in place. And then like pats him on the ass and say, all right, good luck. It's pretty impressive shit.
It could be impressive or it could be terrible writing. I don't know which one it is.
I like that he's that good at transporters. Who's going to be able to beam a whole universe onto this runabout? Chief O'Brien.
Listen, man, the force field goes down. This thing's been expanding 300% every time it grows. There's like a spotlight coming through the window of this lab. They make it seem like it's the entire size of the lab to the point where it blows the fucking outer bulkhead out. Right? We get a space depressurization scene. And then somehow they shrink the whole thing back down to like the size of a Gatorade cooler at the football game.
Yeah. I mean, your criticism's right. There's an inconsistent portrayal of what this thing is so that they could have the dramatic tension of it kind of just sitting there in the background while they're doing the runabout piloting bit at the end. This episode isn't perfect. Like that all of that was a little sloppy. But I genuinely liked the conversation that was had between the characters about this. Particularly that once again, Kira, the not Starfleet officer, gives voice to a much more practical, I think we should just kill it.
Let's rephrase that anymore. How about instead of Kira, the not Starfleet officer, Kira, the civilian and child murdering terrorist.
Yes, I mean, very true. Kira Nerys is not a military officer. She is not trained as a military officer. She is not professional in any way, shape, or form. She was a deadly terrorist that killed military members and civilians alike, no matter who was around, and then was awarded this post as a consequence of her lifetime of killing Cardassians in the name of Bajoran freedom. She is not equipped to deal with weighty space questions with any patience.
Oh, it's going to kill us? Well, then we
Kill
better
it.
kill them.
It's like stepping on ants.
Well, Odo, who, in addition to her being a fierce advocate for the rights of photonic beings, also really cares about protoverse potential space people.
I actually really like that because Odo is a life form that no one thought was a life form. He's very sensitive about this question. Like that makes sense for him, where he says, "I don't step on ants." It's like I used to be a pile of goo before you Jamokes accidentally realized I was a sentient being all along, and that gives him the perspective that none of these other characters can have. Of like, you don't know the consequences of the choices you're making with things that you don't think are alive. I was alive and no one figured it out. So maybe have a gentler disposition when it comes to these questions. Okay, that's a perfect character to put that voice into the show.
Okay, Odo. Well, let's go and we're gonna take, or Cisco. Let's take this proto universe. Let's put it up on space dock, and let's let it destroy space dock, and then destroy Earth, and see how you feel about this. So Cisco's like, all right, give me 1 hour. I have to go think and have some what I assume was going to be like, the classic Star Trek epiphany moment where like, oh, there's my son. I'm going to talk to him about his day at school. He's going to mention something about one of his classes. Eureka. There's the solution to the problem. As we've already pointed out, while he's supposed to be debating the quandary he's in, and I love him talking about the Borg.
Yeah, that was a great captain's log. If anything, I kind of wanted him to continue that thought of like that's on his fucking mind.
Like the Borg didn't think about people that they were conquering and, how does this make me different and whatever. Instead, he goes home and finds out that his son is banging casino girls that are 4 years older as he is a 14-year-old. So he has to set aside
15-year-old.
He has to set aside his once a paycheck space dilemma that is going to try to destroy everybody on the ship to tell his son about safe sex practices and no, he cannot bring her to
bring
dinner.
Your casino hooker over for dinner.
Not tonight, because I may be committing genocide. I don't know. It remains to be seen. I was supposed to be using time to deliberate. Instead, I'm,
I have
getting
the parents.
anxiety.
I'm gonna have to speed run this decision about good could be countless numbers of lives within an entire universe that is slowly expanding.
You need to go see Julian Bashir right now and see if you've picked up any Casino Girl VD.
So they arrive at the solution that they're going to tow this thing back into the Gamma Quadrant where they found it, because there is a distinct lack of explanation as to why that is an acceptable solution, given what they describe about the proto universe. Again, like this last segment of the plot is done in a very sloppy fashion, and I think it holds back the overall episode that otherwise has very strong performances in it and gives you tons of background about characters that's interesting. And it's because they tell you originally, oh, this will eventually expand to destroy all life in the sector. That's what Julian says. Like, it's as it continues to expand, as the universe inevitably does, and it'll get larger and larger and larger and larger, and it's going to destroy everything because it's a universe. It's going to have its own mass, its own energy, and it's going to displace everything else. And so what do? Let's put it back in the Gamma Quadrant. Why? So it can ruin other people's lives? So it can expand and destroy all the garbage planets around the wormhole? That's the plan? You psychos?
And the wormhole.
And the wormhole itself? They're like, we're just going to put it back where we found it. Why? Because that's what you're supposed to do with an atom bomb you accidentally found?
Do we look like the crew of the Enterprise? Do you think we're going to solve problems and make things better?
No, we're gonna make it worse and then put it where we found it.
We're gonna kick that can down the road and leave it for somebody else to
Hey,
fix.
sorry we found this accidental atom bomb that was wandering around. Really great catch on our part. Anyway, we sort of experimented on it, and then some rats chewed some cables, and now it's bigger and is slowly going to destroy everything around here. Well, we dropped it back off. It's ticking. Bye. Like,
Also,
great.
we dropped some Borg drones off on your surface, so
Just you don't want to be around for when the universe expands and kills you anyway. Like, you don't.
that's right up there with Janeway's decision to let the Borg live. Like, eh, existential
It's
dread and terror. Whatever. Just
these
leave it
kinds
alone.
of mistakes are very frustrating because if it's like two lines of spackle and this episode can make sense. That's
Yeah.
all it took. Like, there's a reason why it needs to be back there. You explain that reason with some technobabble. Great. Now your story has a reason for why you're doing this.
Oh, the
Instead, put it
nebula we
back.
found it would have contained it, and it could have been its own sentient happy hole.
Right.
Oh, look, the proto universe. There is advanced life in there, and they're now communicating with us, and they're telling us to open this dimensional rift up, and they can have their own universe and be happy. They've had generations and generations to ponder this problem. They're not leaving it up to the fucking management of a space gas station.
Yeah. Like it's like the episode of Voyager where the planet's
The
moving super
donut.
fast.
Mhm.
And they like realize their entire universe is being toyed with by the space janitor people on Deep Space Nine, and they like send a multiversal probe out to communicate with them. And they like just put us here, PLZ. Like even that would have been better. And instead, it's this forced march to this climax where you have to have Arjun's piloting ability be the critical thing so that he goes and does something cool to save the day, so that there could be some justification for why Jadzia wouldn't just fail him out of being an initiate after, basically calling her a nasty fucking slut to her face. And
True.
so
That is what he
that's
said.
where we wound up. Is that's what we got.
I did like them just chilling out in the wormhole.
We
I
haven't done that.
I didn't know that was an option. I figured once you're in, you just get shoved through, and it's an automated process. Apparently, you can just stop and hang out and see the big planetoids and whatever else. You're in the Celestial Temple.
Yeah,
With
this is the Celestial Temple. It
In
is
fact, I would think that if you have to drop a proto universe anywhere inside of the Celestial Temple / wormhole, this extra dimensional space is a much better place to put a new universe that is going to expand to the size of your universe eventually. Oh, we don't have access to the Gamma Quadrant anymore. Also, everyone's not going to die.
I mean, when you really think about it, if anyone's going to be able to handle the implications of somehow getting this proto universe into some other location, it's going to be the aliens so advanced that they don't understand the concept of linear time anymore. So you just like, Ben, why don't you go in there and like commune with the fucking spirits, whatever the prophet's supposed to do, and like say, hey, like, can you take this thing? We don't know what to do with it. Like, can you ask them for help real quick? This is just a little much for us.
Dump it in there. Let the prophets take all of the sentient life in this protoverse, hit them with confusing visions of their dead ex-girlfriends or wives, make them relive painful moments from their history. It'll just be mass hell for everybody.
They will taste their own medicine.
The prophets are like, okay, cool. Here's a ship. There's 2 people. There's another ship. There's 1,000 people. There's another ship. There's 500 people. Hey, here's a little dinky oh my God, there are billions of people in us now. Too much.
Oh no, the wormhole has become schizophrenic. It's could be bad. Oh no, it's going to the Delta Quadrant. Not the part with the Borg, though. It's going to be the part with the Jeff Goldblum people. The garbage part.
Cool stuff in this episode. Some bad connective tissue plot. The rats were the high point, along with Quark's very juicy, salacious background history.
And Jadzia, like, as establishing her backstory, having her go through her day, as much as the episode makes a joke of it, like, her having a very active sexuality is actually a somewhat personality defining, and it's interesting. Like, it provides some. She did something in the plot. She advises people about their love lives. Like she has a function as a consequence of this aspect of her personality. It's actually somewhat interesting, and not like with Troy probably filled this role on TNG, but that was just much more like emotional, sort of like hippie, sort of like you have to be empathetic. This is right up like more, hey, this is how you get together with somebody, right? Like you should follow your passions and couple up with others, and sex is fun.
That's Riker's role.
It's true. She's Riker. You're right.
Yeah, she's Riker.
She's the female space Riker.
She's Riker, but not as good as a pilot, because I'm thinking Riker is probably a level 8 pilot.
Certainly the finest, one of the finest in all of Starfleet. So rank 9, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, she is the female Riker. And it's actually like, and instead of just being a meme, it's actually really a key part of her character.
Yep. Speaking of romance, next episode, season 2, episode 18, Profit and Loss, which obviously by the title we can tell this is going to be a Ferengi episode, right? If it's profit in the title.
No.
Quark is reunited with his lost Cardassian love, but he learns that she is a member of the Cardassian underground.
It's much more than you're gonna love this one.
Of course.
You're gonna love this one. This is one of many of the fantastic Quark episodes that DS9 secretly has. And it's also a pairing that you had already actually talked about wanting to see in a prior episode. So the No Peters Allowed on the Discord are going to be very happy. This is the Quark Garrick episode.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. So
I was going to say Profit and Loss. Quark is reunited with his lost Cardassian love. We're right back to banging the boss's sister, huh?
Listen, he's a rogue. We know this now.
Mm-hmm.
And we know you, some of you out there, you're new to V'ger Please. We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us recently. Feel free to subscribe to us on whatever platform you wish, and like and share our podcast on whether it's YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other podcast apps out there. We would always appreciate that. Leave comments on those places, engage with the material. Other people can find it more easily. But more importantly, we'd love it if you joined our community, which you can do very easily merely by emailing us at vgerplease@gmail.com or hitting me up via DM at Twitter at vgerplease or at Intern of Doom, which is my personal Twitter. We just asked for a little bit of interaction, so we give you a Discord link so we can just kind of keep out the robots and that sort of thing. Please do join us. We will find the things you post interesting and comment them about them at the beginning of the episode sometimes. And until then, see you later.